I'm Joe Yeager. I'm the Park Operations Region Manager for North Georgia.
Okay, great. So that's Northeast Georgia. Is that how Region 1 works? Or
It's
is
all across North Georgia.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So it runs from Alabama to South Carolina.
Wow.
What's the southern boundary?
It's not really a boundary. It's kind of a wiggled line.
But what would you say? Is it I-20?
It used to be, but when we added Region 4, it moved up a little bit. So now, it's from Summerville and then down to Gainesville, and then kind of slides back up through, have Livonia and Tallulah Falls.
What does your day-to-day work look like?
Well, in operations, I mean, it can vary greatly.
Okay.
We've got 14 sites in that area. Okay. And, there's no 2 days alike, no day dull. But as operations, obviously that brings in, personnel matters to events to personnel can go in 100 different ways.
Yeah.
Not just hiring, but also, evaluations and issues and personnel actions, all the above.
Okay.
As a region manager, when things kind of zig when they were supposed to zag, they end up on my desk.
So you're mostly managing people, not the resource, and that's where Matt and Phil come into it. That
sometimes the personnel matters do end up coming to me, and that's probably I'm not trying to be awkward about it, but it's probably the least attractive part. If someone said, what part of your job is the most challenging or least attractive?
Sure.
No question. In some of those lights, it would be personnel, and that's probably just not me. Probably any management might say that.
Sure.
it truly is.
But on the flip side, there's wonderful sides of personnel too. You get to celebrate lots of wonderful things
And that's more often the case.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, that's good. And how long have you been working with DNR, and kind of what's your career background? If you could just kind of quickly march through your
I've been with DNR, I think about 23 years. Okay. I've been the Northern Region Manager now for 12 years.
Okay.
I came up as assistant manager to a small park manager to a big park manager, and then became region manager. So worked at the time we had 3 regions, so I worked in all 3 regions.
Okay.
So it just the way it worked out. My first 3 positions were all in different regions.
Yeah.
But that was probably a benefit.
It was.
So that you have a greater diversity of experiences. Yeah. And I think that's really key for moving around within an agency, that you do get that. Makes you a better manager.
It does. And then when things come up, you can relate to the sites, because one of the little things that parks people like to say when they're coming up is, have you been to all the sites yet? And because I worked in all 3 regions pretty quickly, yes? I could say yes pretty early in my career. You'd run into a 20-year person, he'd say, no, I got 2 I've never been to. I'm like, yeah, I Went to all of them in like 6 years. Or some kind of shorter time frame. That's one of our little talking things we talk about. Have you been to all the parks yet?
Yeah. Well, have you seen the parks change in your tenure here, 23 years with the DNR? Just some things maybe you can comment on, whether it be through ways in which land's managed or personnel issues or things like that. What things stand out to you?
Yeah, the big things that stand out would be, unfortunately, it's a budget matter that has impacted our ability to, do some of our capital projects.
Sure. And
then our operational models, our staffing models. When I started, we had all the lodge parks, and we had a whole different staffing model.
Right.
And then we had to go through those cutbacks in 08, 09. I think it was more 09, 10 maybe. And that changed an awful lot about the number of part-time positions, part-time staffing, how it ultimately changed some roles of some of those salaried positions, the fixed manager, the increase of administration on park management and assistant park managers. As we became more automated, that changed a lot of the administrative processes.
Sure. Yeah.
And a park manager has to be in charge of, all those things and know how to do all those things. So it impacted a bit of our recruitment and what type of a person we needed and the skill set we needed.
Yeah.
So Definitely a change.
Yeah.
I came in with a business background. So back to your question, where I came from. I grew up on a working farm, and went to college and had a lot of business classes, and went into the business field for about 11 years, and then got the bug to inquire about DNR, kind of go back to your roots. And I had family in the business in another state, so I had kind of a front row seat. And started inquiring. Next thing I knew, I was looking at an interview and a job offer. So yes, growing up on a farm, then having a business degree, and then later after business and having quite a bit of management experience. When I interviewed with DNR, it was a really good fit. I was able to relate to the natural resource issues, park issues, but then I think what allowed me to kind of grow my career, one, I was about 10 years older than the normal college grad at that point.
Right.
And I had management background. And personally, I think that's what allowed me to excel. That was a big part of it.
Yeah, I'm sure that's something that on-the-job training is a little slower than coming in with it.
Yeah. And being in outside business, it was much more stressful. So coming to the park was just kind of laid back. And I remember being a young assistant manager at FDR State Park, and
Pretty park.
first busy period that I was solely in charge, and it was sold out, and a couple things were going sideways. And the staff was ready to watch me crack and crumble. And it was no big deal. Just deal with the issues. And I remember thinking, yeah, this is a pretty good fit for me.
Steady and easy.
Yeah.
Keep her steady. Well, how's COVID-19 affected park use?
Yeah.
And what have you seen? What changes have you seen in use and management and everything?
I mean, we're all watching the news, so we know how it affects everybody's concern for safety, as we're sitting a safe distance apart even now. We just immediately, had modified operations plans, and they were modifying weekly in the beginning. And we were all hanging on the announcements from the governor and his press conferences at 3 or 4 in the afternoon about, okay, how's that going to be converted into our new ops plan? And they were, things were moving all the time. But yes, we had to digest that. Our director would put that into an operations plan for us, and then we had to make that fit each site, because each site had their unique features of how to apply the social distancing, the safety, restricting access so that we could maintain a safe environment and avoid overcrowding. That was a number one, and still is.
Because people have time on their hands, Joe. More so, are you seeing an increase in park passes sold and visitor use?
We're up here in North Georgia, where we don't have a great big concentrated city. But it's been our experience that the folks from Metro Atlanta, when they came up to North Georgia, would see this as everything is safe. Compared to maybe where they came from. This was everything was safe. But our observation was, wow, they're packing us out in areas that are making us overcrowded, but not in their views. So we had a lot of communication to do, a lot of modified operations plans to keep things safe here, even to a public that was maybe leaving a more concentrated or dense area and had a different perspective.
It's interesting. Human behavior is definitely a unique characteristic to observe and then try to manage it.
So there we were, with more people coming to select parks because they want to go do the hiking. I want to be socially distant outdoors. That's safe. And we're sitting here going, ooh, this is becoming overcrowded and not safe. And as you would expect, we had staffing challenges. We had people that were sensitive to the issue, or medically fragile, as the news would say. So we had people coming up, overcrowding our parks, that we had to come up with management plans to avoid. We had staffing shortages and challenges because of COVID concerns. So we were forced to share staff, historic sites weren't running the same operation plan, so we were using that staff at traditional parks. Matt and I were going out working weekends, doing crowd control, whatever site needed it.
Man.
So it's been all hands on deck.
Yeah. What's the best thing about what you do, Joe? Like, if you could boil it down.
The cliche answer that everyone gives is, "Oh, I love being outdoors," and that is true. But for me, I think because the experience and the background I brought into it, I was able to capitalize on my love of the outdoors, growing up on a farm. That sounds kind of quaint, but it really was applicable.
Yeah.
I already knew how to run equipment. I was very versed in a lot of the things that some of the people had to learn, so it was very helpful. And then having some management background, working with a lot of like-minded people and trying to accomplish a common goal.
Got it.
It really worked out well when we all had our minds going in the right direction.
And when you say management, Joe, that's the human resource management, it's the natural resource management, and it's the financial management.
Getting it all blended together.
Is that right?
All
those
that touches
three
it.
are the big ones that
Sure.
really, it is important to understand finance from the standpoint of managing resources. It's
It
just
is.
not about knowing what tree that is or what wildlife that
Sure.
is. You got to know a little bit about everything.
You do. Our interviews now have much more focus on business background.
Interesting.
I got some funny stories there about how
Yeah.
people would, why does that matter? Well, we need to talk a little bit more.
Sure.
And that's what I try to advise people.
Yeah.
When someone is maybe a college student or even a high school that's considering a career, what are some of the things I need to be focused on?
Yeah.
And that's a common question and a great conversation. And you can go on for an hour if the person is really into it.
Yeah.
But obviously, if you're coming to interview, it's still a job. It's still a job.
Sure.
So you got to know what you're talking about. You can't just come in and think that I can interview for a park and I've never been to a state park. You got some free time. You've got some opportunity to go recreate. You visit some parks.
Yeah.
You don't want to go in an interview and not even be able to say that you've ever been to a state park or been to the park that you're interviewing for.
Right.
So get out, visit your parks, understand how they work. Most of the staff, talk to you about that very, very willingly.
Yeah.
So understand your parks, and then I think sometimes when our kids come out of college, they're thinking they're going right into upper management.
Right.
So we have to kind of talk to them about getting your foot in the door, which is a common phrase, but literally you might need to start in a position, an interpreter, or even an hourly position.
Right.
And if that's your passion, you'll grow quickly.
Sure.
Because we're pretty hungry for management. We scour to get good park managers sometimes.
I'm glad you said that, because that was going to be the last question I had, was what sort of advice you would give, but it sounds like
Be open-minded to a starting position. Be open-minded to location. All of us that have been with the system for a while, with DNR, we probably started in a location that we didn't want to call long-term home.
Right.
But it's not going to be that way. You're going to move up. You're in a position that you're not wanting to stay at. You want to grow from.
Right.
Particularly if you're starting an hourly position and this is a career that you're seeking.
Sure.
You're going to want to grow and promote. So it won't matter if you go to a part of the state that maybe wasn't your first choice, because as you get established and get some experience and some knowledge, you're going to be able to more pick and choose your next interview and position and location.